Well, I felt like I was in it. It was an electrifying game, a fast start and a strong finish that we had. So even though I wasn't there physically, I felt I was there spiritually. So that was very exciting. But this is a different game.
It is a different game. That is Jameis Winston talking about the game he wasn't a part of, the Buccaneers' 48-40 victory over the New Orleans Saints. Well, a few months later, here we are again, and so much has changed for the Buccos. We're going to delve into that as we welcome you to our podcast here on pewterpirates.com, A Few Extra Bucs. We'd like to thank our title sponsors off the bat, House of Brews in Lutz, Florida, on the corner of Northdale, Mabry, and Van Dyke, and, of course, Sea Dog Brewing Company, 2 great locations in Treasure Island and, of course, in Clearwater. Great brews, great food, great service. I got to welcome in our producer, Justin Thomas, who has downloaded a lot of sound. You know, I cover the Saints and the Bucs, kind of have a strange life, and we've downloaded a lot of good sound on both sidelines, haven't we?
Yeah, this is actually probably the most sound we've had maybe ever.
Yeah, we have stuff from Drew Brees. I had a chance to catch up with him in New Orleans. You won't find that on any other podcast covering the Bucs or any covering the Saints as well. It was an exclusive one-on-one with Drew Brees. He talks about Jameis Winston and this Buccaneer rematch. We also have a lot from Jameis Winston. Have a great stat on he and Drew Brees coming up, and Dirk Cutter as well. But we have to bring in the meat of our sandwich here on A Few Extra Bucs. Roy Cummings, how are you, my friend?
Is that a spam sandwich that we're having here, guys?
You said that. I was giving you a compliment.
Some kind of meat product. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. I don't think I've ever been referred to as the meat before. I think I've been called meat a few times, but hey, I'll take any compliment I can get.
Yeah, you're the heart of the order, I should say. You're the cleanup hitter here.
Thank you.
A Few Extra Bucs. Well, let's delve right into it. You know, we heard Jameis Winston off the top. Spiritually, he was into it. I thought Jameis Winston's press conference today revealed a few things, Roy. First, the visor gate has finally been confirmed. He's been wearing that visor the last couple of games, and he's been playing great, no interceptions. He said it's just all about swag, the visor. No big story behind that at all. Nothing with his eyesight or any of that.
Swag, huh? Wow.
Yeah, it's all about the swag, man.
I didn't expect that. I mean, I really thought it was more of a safety thing, but how much swag do you get out of a visor? I mean, it's a visor.
Well, you know what? In terms of me, guys, we always have our 3 and out segment. So if you're just listening for the first time, you got to hear our 3 and out segment at the end. We throw kind of off-topic pop culture stuff. I don't know about you guys, but I've never been a big spending a lot of money on sunglasses guy because I have had nice sunglasses and I always lose them. So, you know, I try to learn from my past mistakes. So I guess I don't have as much swag because my sunglasses may cost $15. I mean, I don't know if there's a parallel there, but you know what I'm saying, maybe.
But, you know, the visor for a quarterback, it can't be a tinted visor. It's just a clear visor, which, you know, you can barely see the thing. But swag, huh? All right, well, hey, okay, good. Good for him.
Yeah, before we delve into Jameis Winston's mindset, here's what he had to say about how he mentally prepares for football games now.
I meditate weekly, daily, actually in the morning, just to get control of your emotions and to be present. I use an app called Headspace. It's a pretty good app. Just puts everything in perspective, slows things down. It always talks about how you don't self-talk is not necessarily good because you're not present. Sometimes you just got to live in the moment and trust your instincts and go out there and play.
All right, I'm not making fun of Jameis Winston at all. Just like the last podcast, we're not making fun of people who paint their face at games. But this was kind of a revelation to me. And this is, I think, very good because personally I don't meditate. I appreciate people if that helps them out. Maybe I need to get the Headspace app. I'm not sure how that works either. But you know what? I will say this, Roy. You know, it's obvious to me that we've seen a different Jameis Winston since he came into training camp and he is, came back from his suspension in terms of emotions. He's not overly emotional, the same guy that we saw his first 3 years in the NFL.
No, I mean, we're seeing signs of maturity. I don't know if everybody would think that, you know, meditating is a sign of maturity, but I mean, hey, if that's what's working for him, the holistic approach to wellness, good for him. I mean, let's face it, again, much like the visor, it's working right now. So Certainly not going to criticize it, not going to ridicule it, not going to make fun of it in any way. I'm happy for him. Look, everybody has their little thing. I've never been a guy who quite understood, the guys who go and, put their helmet on and then smash it against the locker and that kind of thing either. So the guy who meditates, hey, good for him. I mean, if it puts you in the zone, man, good, because look, these games are a big chunk of it is mental. It's how do you handle things mentally, and if you have some internal confidence or an internal Zen moment that you can get into, go for it, man. Whatever works. Nobody's going to knock you.
Yeah, I thought, we learned a lot about Jameis Winston in today's presser. And, here's a stat that I find incredible, Roy. And I don't like talking to you and Justin about a whole lot before these podcasts because I like to get your initial reaction, hopefully surprise you. But I did do quality research for this podcast, just so you guys know. We don't just flip the switch and start yapping here. We try to do some research. And I did some research looking at Jameis Winston's numbers compared to Drew Brees as we kind of move forward from meditation and visors to the actual game here. Drew Brees' first year in the NFL was basically a redshirt year. So I'm going to throw that out. He sat behind Doug Flutie, and he didn't have a start. Okay, so we'll move past that. And keep in mind, Jameis Winston didn't have that redshirt year. He was thrown to the Wolves pretty much right away. So in the first 4 years as starters, right, touchdowns, interceptions, completion percentage, comparing Drew Brees to Jameis Winston, Roy, the stats are virtually even. In fact, if you compare the numbers, Jameis Winston has more touchdowns, 81 to 79. And oh, by the way, he still has 4 games to pad that stat. Interceptions, he only has 2 more than Drew Brees did. Then again, he could pad those stats as well. Completion percentage, almost identical. Brees was 62.1%. Jameis Winston, 61.7% in their 4th season in the NFL. Drew Brees was, like Jameis Winston, benched numerous times by Marty Schottenheimer as head coach for throwing interceptions. So if you're a Bucs fan, how about that for good news? Because you know what? It takes a while for these quarterbacks to learn in this league.
I'll tell you what, Mike. You know what? You get the bury the lead award for this one because I'm surprised you didn't come out of the box with that one. That's a hot take right there. I mean, who would have thought that? I mean, that is an incredible comparison of a Hall of Fame quarterback and a guy who a lot of people are ready to just absolutely dump on. And I will say this. I think the biggest problem there's a lot of problems the NFL has. But I think one of their biggest problems is they are so quick to give up on young quarterbacks. Nobody develops these guys. They want them to step in right away and basically be Drew Brees right away. Well, look at this. If you just take a little bit of time and develop a guy, look what can happen. And, I know this for a fact. I think if you look back at most of the great quarterbacks, you will see, certainly it was this way with Brett Favre. I think it was this way with Fran Tarkenton. I think you can look at a lot of great quarterbacks and see that their first 3-4 years in the league were really rocky. And, maybe they weren't as criticized as Jameis Winston has been, but teams stuck with them. And as a result, they had a chance to grow and develop into the players that they became. And I think that's the key to success for Jameis Winston, too. We see the talent there, no doubt about it. It's a matter of him finding that groove and staying in it more often than he falls out of it. And I think you do that through experience and realizing that it's not all about you. And I don't mean that in a negative way, that it's not always on you to make all the plays, that you've got a defense and a running game and receivers that you just have to get the ball into their hands with and that kind of thing. And clearly, I mean, that's what's happened with Drew Brees. He obviously figured that out. He improved in terms of his own game. He's a very accurate passer now, whereas those numbers suggest that he was not that accurate when he first got into the league. But over time, these guys get better, and there it is right there. Tremendous stat. Great original research.
I appreciate it. Jameis Winston, I wanted to attend his presser today, but I had to go to Fox 13, and I appreciate them having me out. But they had to kind of move around the practice schedule today. So I asked Kevin O'Donnell of Fox 13 to ask Jameis the question about those numbers, and here's what Jameis had to say today.
In terms of numbers, it's really about winning. I know from a career perspective, I reflect on that at the end of seasons. Right now, I'm just focused on this week, seeing what I can do to get better this week. Other than that, I don't got nothing to say about it. But he's the GOAT, and if I'm being compared to him in any way, it's a blessing, definitely.
It's great stuff from Jameis Winston. As I mentioned earlier in the intro, I had a chance to talk to Drew Brees at length this week on Tuesday about all things Saints, his legacy, his great MVP-like season. But we also talked about the Bucs, and he says he respects Jameis Winston's work ethic and many things about him. But here's what he had to say about Jameis Winston and his thoughts on the Bucs quarterback in his fourth season.
I don't think you see any guys that come in and just have it figured out. I mean, it definitely takes some time, and so much of it has to do with the pieces that are around you and the system that you're in, and just catching some breaks too. And so, listen, I know this. We've always had our battles with the Bucs, and I feel like Jameis has always found a way to make plays. And I obviously them being a divisional opponent. Not only are you playing against them twice a year, but you're watching a lot of their film because you're playing similar opponents. And I've been impressed with his growth and his development. And while for any young quarterback there are ups and downs, I've heard a lot of things, good things about his work ethic, and his desire to be a great player. And I think you see that show up.
How about that from Drew Brees? He's always going to keep it professional, but I think Jameis Winston's known around the league as a guy who has a boatload of talent, Roy. But he has the reputation, obviously the off the field stuff, but people also know how hard the guy works, and that's one of the first things that Brees said to me when I brought up his name.
I liked what I heard there because it sounded genuine. Mike, we do these conference calls with the coach of another team or the coach of the opposite team, the opponent for the week, and usually a player. A lot of times it's a quarterback. And in those conference calls, you hear a lot of cliches. And you always, when you ask a coach or a player about somebody like Jameis Winston, you usually hear the same thing. Oh yeah, really a good player, a lot of talent there. They're never going to say anything, negative, obviously. But what Drew Brees was saying there really sounded genuine, and he brought up things, as you said. He brought up the work ethic. He brought up how, he even paused for a moment, and you could just kind of see it, can almost see him, almost shaking his head saying, man, I don't know. All I know is the guy always finds a way to make plays against us, and he makes it tough on us. And I think you sense a genuine, true, as you said, a genuine level of respect. And then you've got the perspective of all of his time in the NFL, plus his experience, obviously very similar to Jameis Winston's coming into the league, and saying that, hey, you know what? Very few guys have it figured out. And that's the point I was making earlier. I just think that the NFL has become, they expect everybody to have it figured out as soon as they come in. Fans expect it, teams expect it, owners expect it, and it's just wrong. And it's not just quarterbacks. It's everybody. Everybody expects, instant gratification. And it just doesn't happen. I don't know. For whatever reason, you would just love to see teams be a little bit more patient with players. I think they'd find that in the end, they'll probably be rewarded for it. But really interesting stuff there from Drew Brees. And again, I think he speaks genuinely. He's just not throwing, answers out there to answer the question. It seemed like a real genuine commentary on what he knows about Jameis Winston.
It seemed to be. And here's the interesting angle with Jameis Winston today. He has said he has a lot of mentors that he has leaned on, especially this year with all the ups and downs he's had, between the suspension and being benched and all of that. He didn't want to name names, but he also had this to say about Drew Brees, kind of a funny story. And keep in mind, Drew Brees had his shoulder surgery in Birmingham when he was a free agent between the San Diego and New Orleans years, and Jameis Winston grew up in Birmingham. I think this is a possible connection.
I had Drew Brees' first autograph when he went to the Saints. I had seen him at a place in Birmingham, and he had gave me his autograph, so I still cherish that to this day. He probably don't remember it, but I do.
I wish I was there because I would have followed up and asked Jameis the timeline of that, because if Jameis Winston got Drew Brees' autograph, this is probably circa 2006. So, let's do the math. He's what, 24 minus 13. So Jameis Winston was 11, I guess, around then. I'm guessing if that's all true, the timeline, I think it probably is, that Jameis Winston got an autograph from Drew Brees before any Saints fan did, Roy.
Yeah, you might be right about that. And again, talking about being genuine, that's Jameis right there. He's a football fan, and he still looks up to players like that. I'm sure he probably gets a real kick out of being on the same field as guys like Drew Brees when he is. And he clearly holds himself to the standard that those guys have established. And he does this. We do know about Jameis Winston, Mike, you and I, for being around him as much as we have been. He wants to be the best, and he measures himself against those guys. He's obviously had some moments in his career on and off the field that have prohibited him or slowed his path towards that end. But I think at the end of the day, if given an opportunity, he's going to make a good run at being one of the best ever, because it matters so much to him, because he loves the game so much. And I think that's an important element in the development and just the way he's made up and just the way he's kind of built for this league.
It's such a long football season, guys. I'm in the Bucs locker room watching Ryan Fitzpatrick get really into playing ping pong today. And obviously a lot of players play ping pong. It's a popular thing in the Bucs locker room. It's a popular thing with many NFL locker rooms. But I was thinking, you know what? We're getting ready for another Bucs Saints game. And Fitzmagic was unbelievable in that opener, unbelievable in week number 2. And here we are a few months later. He's back on the bench. Now we're talking about Jameis Winston coming off 2 straight victories. I mean, Roy, a lot of things can happen in an NFL season. It's crazy.
Yeah, and we've seen it all happen in this NFL season with the Buccaneers. We saw an incredible start that nobody saw coming. The greatest start by a quarterback in the history of the game through 3 games. Nobody saw that coming. We saw a horrible dive by this team. Absolutely, took themselves out of playoff contention. Now we're seeing a rally. We saw the defense play some of the worst defense in NFL history for 5-6 weeks. And now we're seeing a defense playing very respectable football. Hey, look, and I was one who was basically saying when the change came from Mark Duffner, and it's true, and fans may not see it this way, but the truth of the matter is the first couple of weeks it wasn't any better. And there were a couple of weeks even after that when it wasn't any better. But overall, this team defensively has gotten healthy. It's gotten energized a little bit. And it's figured the defense out. Everybody's wondering what happened with the defense. Well, they've gotten healthy. They've figured things out. And now they're playing respectable football. And it's why in the NFL season, you're right, it's such a long season. You can't take 1 week and say this defines the team. It doesn't. And you sometimes can't even take 3-4 games and say it defines the team. Because how would you define the Buccaneers right now? I don't know that you can. Who are they? Are they the team that started the season so hot? No. Are they the team that looked so terrible for 4 or 5 weeks after that? No. Are they the team we saw in the last couple of weeks? That's probably more like it. I think that's the team, but we still don't know for sure, because now we get a little bit better test. Now we're seeing them go up against a team that's still hot, granted coming off a loss, but that's hot. And then they're going to go to Baltimore and Dallas and play a couple of teams that are going to be challenges for them, but certainly beatable teams. So I think we find out what this team really is here in December. And I think that'll determine how we look at the 2018 season.
Yeah, I agree. Drew Brees told me this week when looking at the Bucs, it's almost a tale of 3 seasons. You had the Fitzmagic, you had Winston, and then he talks about the defense. As you mentioned, the defense getting a lot better after not being so good. And New Orleans can really relate to that as well. But I asked Dirk Cutter about the Saints defense. We'll get to that in just a second. But to close out Jameis Winston, 2 straight victories starting, 2 straight games without turning the ball over. Has his mindset changed at all? He was asked that today.
I don't think it's changed at all. I'm just focused on keeping it simple, man. Not doing too much, I think I'm just doing what I need to do.
Yeah, you like that,
I
Roy?
think it's right. Yeah, I do. I think that's exactly right. It's easy to say that his mindset has changed, that he's thinking, don't throw the pick, don't throw the pick, don't throw the pick. But no, I think what's happened is he's simplified his game. He's taking what the defense gives him. And this is what you have to learn in the NFL. You can you can go a long way. Tom Brady probably does this better than anybody. He takes what the defense gives him. Drew Brees does it too. But they take what the defense gives them. And if the defense is giving you 7 yards, on an underneath route to a guy running a slant or a back coming on running a wheel route, take it. Don't force it 12 yards downfield. Those 4 or 5 extra yards don't matter as much as holding on to the ball and just being, patient with it. And I think Jameis Winston is learning that. Did it take the picks, the 10 picks over 4 games for him to figure it out? Perhaps. Has he been told this before? Yes. Will he fall back into the old habits? Possibly. You got to hope, though, that he comes out of those regresses a little bit quicker. And that's what you have to hope. You've got to hope that he remembers this, that the simple approach is the best. And you know this from your time in covering the Lightning, and I think we probably all sports fans have heard this phrase. There's the old KISS system. Keep it simple, stupid. And that's really what Jameis Winston is doing. He's reminding himself, keep it simple. Keep it simple. And as long as you keep it simple, you're probably going to be successful. You may not be spectacular, but you're going to be successful. And you know what's spectacular? Consistent success.
That sounds like hockey, doesn't it? That whole thing just sounds like hockey. That's why we love hockey so much. All right, well, let's get away from the quarterbacks a little bit, even though I have one more soundbite from Drew Brees. But Dirk Cutter and his presser, I asked him today, the one similarity in these two teams, because it seems like 10 years ago since that opener in New Orleans, both teams' defenses are much better, and they're playing much better complementary football. Here's what Dirk Cutter answered my question, saying what he has noticed that's different about the Saints defense heading into this game Sunday in Raymond James Stadium.
They've been relatively injury-free on defense, so they've played together, and I think they play extremely hard and extremely fast. I mean, they don't make very many mistakes, and they're aggressive. They give you a lot of 5-man pressure and a lot of man coverage. So, there's somewhat you're gonna make some big plays and you're gonna have some negative plays. In game one, we hit a lot of big plays on them, and I'm sure that's what they'll be trying to stop in this game. And they've reduced those, and they've pressured the quarterback consistently throughout the year, throughout their 10-game winning streak.
Yeah, it's amazing to me that the Bucs defense's story is more amazing because the injuries, Roy. I mean, the Saints defense had a lot of potential. They had a good year a year ago, but everything has really happened the wrong way with this Bucs defense, from Quan Alexander, Kendall Beckwith not getting on the field, the entire secondary, including the safeties, not playing last week, opposed to the team that started the season. That's to me the biggest story in this game if you compare these two teams from the first game.
Yeah, I agree, Mike. It's funny. Everybody's going to be focused on the two offenses, on the two quarterbacks, obviously in this game, and rightfully so. But if you want to know where this game is going to be decided, it's on the defensive side. Who's going to come out? Are the Bucs going to continue their defensive role? I mean, we've talked all about how Jameis Winston's on a roll without the picks. Well, how about the defensive role the Bucs are on? 6 takeaways now in 2 games. They come in bunches. Their pass rush has been much better. 5 weeks, the last 5-6 weeks now, second or third in the league in sacks. They're obviously getting it done there, simplifying things in the back end. They're playing very representable, respectable defense, and so are the Saints. So I don't think we're going to see a shootout the way we did last time around. I think we're going to see a fairly high-scoring game, but it wouldn't surprise me if the end is 28-23. Does anybody get to 30? Quite possible. But I don't know that we see 39-38 or 42-38 or anything like that. because both defenses are playing pretty good football.
No doubt about it. Drew Brees had this to say about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because he's going to have to face that defense this Sunday. But, I asked him about the roller coaster ride that has been this year's Buccaneers. This Bucs team has been kind of strange this year. They start off and they win in New Orleans. They beat the defending champs. They lose 7 of 8, and now they've won 2 straight. What do you make of this Bucs team right now?
Well, they went through, a little bit of a change there on the defensive side of the ball. I believe it was after the Atlanta game, this year, where, they fired the defensive coordinator. And I think it took them a few games then to maybe kind of reestablish their identity on that side of the ball. But it is kind of the tale of two teams when, maybe 3 teams, you look at them the first couple of games and then, and then maybe that mid-season and now kind of this late, season Bucs team. I think they're playing with a lot of confidence, especially having won 2 straight. They have a string of games here at home, where I think they feel like, they can build some momentum. They've always been a very good pass rush team, and so that's something you always have to have a plan for when you go up against the Bucs. But you see guys in the secondary making a ton of plays. They got 4 picks against Cam last week and the Panthers. So you just see them playing with a lot of confidence, and they seem to have some momentum going.
No doubt about it. This is a Saints team, Roy. They're still smarting after the Dallas loss, a game that was so uncharacteristic in so many ways. I mean, the defense really carried the Saints. Drew Brees had arguably his worst game statistics-wise since he's been with Sean Payton. But now they're going to have more time to prepare for this game, and that's always dangerous with Sean Payton and Drew Brees.
Yeah, it is. And you know what? The Bucs have to hope that maybe they've caught the Saints at just the right time, maybe in a little bit of a slump. Most teams, I shouldn't say every team, most teams go through it. They hit a stretch where they're just not quite as sharp as they have been, over the previous stretch. And, maybe the Saints are in that right now. The fact that they were, they didn't play that well against Dallas, struggled to really score points. Their confidence maybe has a little bit of a nick in it right now. Here they are coming to Tampa, facing a team that, surprised the heck out of them on opening day and is playing better with a lot of confidence. This all adds up to what could be a pretty good opportunity for the Buccaneers to keep their streak alive and keep the Saints streak going. So it's an interesting matchup. Doesn't mean that the Saints can't win this game 38-4 or 38-3. They could easily do it, But at the same time, there's every opportunity here for the Bucs to really put a surprise victory out there. And I guess maybe this would be their signature victory for this season if they could win.
Oh, no doubt about it. I think if they win this game, Roy, and it's not a lot of stiff competition here, but where would this rank recently in wins for the Bucs if they win this game beginning the final quarter of the season against a team many consider the best in the NFC? It would be their 3rd straight win, give them a ton of momentum in the final 3 games.
Well, it would establish them as a legitimate playoff contender again. Again, even though they still have to win out, they're a team that you have to watch out for. And let's face it, since week 4 of the season, no one has looked at the Buccaneers like that. So for, in essence, 2/3 of the season so far, people have looked at the Buccaneers and said, oh, well, that's a win. Whereas if they win this one, it's going to be completely different. It's going to be, no, watch out. This team's figured something out all of a sudden. Now we have to figure out what it is they've figured out, or else we're going to be the next notch in their belt. So very important game for the Buccaneers. It really, this is kind of the season as it stands right now. This is the season right here. You win this one, and everybody's looking at you thinking, wow, check these guys out. You lose it, everybody's kind of like, yeah, that's what we thought. A little bit of a nice little run against a couple of teams who were struggling. Now they're back to being the Bucs.
And we've seen that story many times in recent years. All right, before we get to our predictions and 3 and out, because you got to stick around for both of those, I thought an interesting kind of a quote from Dirk Cutter at his press conference. today was, he talked about Ronald Jones. And Ronald Jones, let's face it, hasn't lived up to what many expected him to be, that compliment to Peyton Barber, the guy that could give you some burst and a breakaway speed and all that, everything he showed at USC. I mean, I'm looking at his numbers this year. He's had 23 carries for 44 yards. He's averaged under 2 yards a carry. He has a touchdown, but that's been about it. Here's what Dirk Cutter, who never shies away from talking about his players in pure honesty for the most part, here's what he had to say about Ronald Jones' season.
Ronald is coming along. I think that's just the best way to say it. He's coming along. He's improved tremendously in two areas, in catching the football and in pass protection, but he just really hasn't been able to break out as a runner. And let's face it, that's what he was brought here to do. And part of it is we haven't been able to get him to any open grass. I mean, it seems like he's always running into the back of the O-line. And part of that is luck of the draw. Part of that is defense and blocking, and part of it might be him. I mean, it's hard to say. One thing I have learned in my experience is it's hard to coach a runner that you've seen do it and tell him to do it different.
The word sugarcoat is not in Dirk Cutter's vocabulary. I love that about him. I love that he's honest. But if my boss is giving me an evaluation, Roy, and he says, you know what, that Nabors guy, he's coming along, I'm not feeling real good about that.
No, I'm not feeling good about it either. But again, boy, I think it was an honest, genuine assessment.
Oh, yeah, really, no doubt.
Yeah. But I got to be honest. What I took from that is what I've seen, which is I have yet to see Ronald Jones really get a good hole to break through. Dirk Cutter said it in that clip there. He's yet to see a lot of open grass, and he's usually looking right at the back of somebody's jersey, and they have not done a good job of opening holes for him. Now, it could be that who knows? Maybe someone's reading the play much better when Ronald Jones is in there. Maybe they see it coming. I don't know what it is. Again, maybe part of that is Ronald Jones, but it has not worked out for him this year. There's no doubt about that. But I think at the same time, to me, I don't think it's all on Ronald Jones. I don't think the offensive line has played well in front of him and given him much of a chance to succeed. And I think that has to change before we see better play out of Ronald Jones. Yes, some of it is Ronald Jones himself. But again, Ronald Jones, remember, he is a guy who he's got to have a crease. If he gets the crease, watch out. But he's got to have the crease. He hasn't had a crease.
Well, Dirk Cutter also said, to your point, he said, most of the time when you have guys who are playmakers in college and they make plays, it's a matter of time before they make them in the NFL. Now, he didn't give a timetable on that, but he almost kind of gave Ronald Jones an opening that we still believe in you. We've seen you do it before. We'll see if you can do it moving forward here. All right, guys, before we get to 3 and out, prediction time. And Roy's really, we haven't kept a tally of this. We probably should have. I've been abysmal with this Bucs team because they're so, I don't know, just unpredictable. I don't know, schizophrenic. I don't know whatever they've been. It's hard to get a pulse of this team, but Roy's had it all year. Roy, what do you think? Saints, Bucs, what's going to happen this Sunday?
I think it's a heck of a game. I really do. Again, I think both teams are playing pretty good football right now. But I see this as a Saints win. I think there's more at stake for the Saints. They're playing for home field advantage throughout the playoffs. The Buccaneers are playing to just kind of become relevant again. The better quarterback is on the Saints, no question. The better running game is with the Saints. I think the better defense is actually with the Saints. The Bucs have played much better, but it's still not quite where it needs to be in a lot of ways. So I still think this is a Saints win, but I don't think it's a blowout. I think it's a close game. I think something like 32-28 maybe sounds about right. Something in maybe 33-28. But I think the Saints win. I think they score 30. And I think they just because they have a little bit more to play for and are just a little bit more polished right now.
Justin, what you got?
I think the Saints' loss to the Cowboys really stung them, and I think they're going to want to come out, like Roy said. They're playing for the first week bye in the playoffs. I think they know that they can't let up. I think they're going to win. I also think it'll be a close game. I'm thinking 31-24.
Wow. Yeah, I'm in agreement with the score. Here's another thing. If the Saints win this game, guys, they'll win the NFC South. It'll be the first time in franchise history they've won the NFC South in back-to-back seasons. Part of me wants to say it's going to be close for a while, then the Saints pull away, because I think this is an angry football team a little bit after that Dallas game, no doubt about it. And I've never been Cam Newton's one of those guys that, man, you never know what you're going to get from him. He could be really good, but last week he was really bad. And I think this Bucs secondary, I give them credit for making the most of their opportunities. I think they'll be a little healthier this week. You could see Grimes back. You could see MJ Stewart. But this is a beat-up secondary for the Bucs, and they're not good. And usually when that's the case, Drew Brees takes advantage. I'm going to go with my gut. I agree with the score in this one. I think it will be close, but I think the Saints pull away, and it's not so close in the fourth quarter. I'm going to say 38-27 Saints, and we'll check back next week. And every time I write these down, because it just seems like every time I write them down, Roy's on the money. So maybe it could be Saints 32-28. But with that said, you know what time it is, Justin. Three and out, baby. 3 questions, and we are out of here. And the guys, they don't know the questions I'm going to ask them. Sometimes I tell Justin, actually, but I didn't tell Justin this time. Roy never knows. We always keep Roy distance because he's Mr. Off the Cuff. He nails it every time. So, all right, we talked about Ronald Jones. I'm going to leave Vita Vea out of this. But to me, it was kind of an interesting second round for the Bucs in the draft. And I think a lot of high hopes out of that. You know, when we did our draft shows, we were doing podcasts back then. But I felt good about the Bucs draft. I like the Vita Vea move. And I like the Ronald Jones move. I liked getting 2 corners. But out of the 3 second-round picks, I know these guys have been injured, but who do you say has the best chance or the best future in the NFL after the small sample size, Roy? You have Ronald Jones, you have MJ Stewart, you have Carlton Davis.
Wow. Out of that group, I'm going to go with I'll tell you what, on draft day, I probably would have said MJ Stewart, but I'm going to go with Carlton Davis. I think he's got special skills. I think he's a smart player, as is MJ Stewart. I think both of those guys have the ability to develop over time into really, really top-level, virtual Pro Bowl caliber players. Those 2 guys have Pro Bowl caliber talent. Ronald Jones does too. But I just think those 2 guys are really they have the ability in the way the NFL is played now to be strong defensive players. They're physical. They're accustomed to playing at the line of scrimmage and getting their hands on guys, being effective that way. It's what you're going to have to do, and I'm surprised more teams don't do it. This is going to become more and more, I think, of a man-like league. So I think I really think that's those guys are the 2. It's going to be between them 2, and I like what I see out of Carlton Davis.
What do you think, Justin?
Roy, once again, could just speak for me. I feel like he's always answered my questions. No, I agree. As y'all know, cornerback is one of the hardest positions to come into the NFL and pick up. And I think Carlton Davis has shown a lot of promise this year. So it seems that as of now that he probably will be the best of the 3.
MJ Stewart's kind of been our guy. He's been our rookie diary here on pewterpirates.com. I really like him. I think he could be a great slot guy. He showed that in the preseason. He got hurt and he got behind a little bit. I think he's going to maybe come back the last quarter of the season now. But it's going to be interesting to see what this team does at the running back position in the offseason, because I think Peyton Barber's shown that, you know, he has a lot of potential. But Ronald Jones, boy, just such a big question mark. We've kind of dove into that. But yeah, I got to say Carlton Davis. To me, he kind of has that X factor in the corner. That swag a little bit, that confidence where he doesn't let any bad plays bother him, and he's got a lot of skills too. So I think it's Carlton Davis. All right, our second question, our 3 and out. We have no idea what's going through the Glazers' minds, and Roy's been through this for years with so many firings and hirings and the timing of decision. Remember, they waited for John Gruden, and everybody was kind of, I guess, thrown off guard by that in some ways. But Mike McCarthy's out there right now. What do you think are the possibilities, even if Dirk wins out, if Mike McCarthy wants to coach the Bucs, and if you're the Glazers, what do you do in that situation? Do you just stick with Dirk even though he finishes strong? How do you handle that whole situation? Because he's out there right now.
Yeah, I know he's out there. I don't think he wants to come here. I think he's got a better fit, or is going to be a better fit in Cleveland. I think that's probably where he wants to go. He's got a bit of a relationship there with Dorsey, the general manager. I think that's probably where he's headed. The other question I have is, if he couldn't get along with Aaron Rodgers, how's he going to do with Jameis Winston? Let's face it, Aaron Rodgers, is as good a quarterback as there is. I think there's a lot of questions right now about Mike McCarthy's ability to innovate. That's really what you heard coming out of the Green Bay camp, is that, he's kind of stuck in maybe maybe even the 90s for all we know. Certainly stuck in the, 2000s. But to me, it just seems like his offense is kind of a little old-fashioned for what the NFL is allowing these days with the way they've changed the rules. And I just think we're starting to already see a little bit of a trend towards teams wanting to get these young, innovative minds in charge of their offense. And I don't think Mike McCarthy fits that model. And so that's the reason I think the Bucs would probably pass and maybe go with somebody, another offensive mind, but someone who's a little bit more innovative because I think if you get Mike McCarthy, in a lot of ways, you're just replacing Mike McCarthy or Dirk Cutter with Dirk Cutter. So I think they probably look a little bit younger and a little bit more different style.
I think Aaron Rodgers is kind of a head case, though, in some way. I don't know if many people could get along with that guy. I just, I don't know. I've just talked to some guys who cover him in Green Bay, and he just seems like he's better than everybody else. And I've covered Drew Brees for a long time, and I know guys who've covered Tom Brady, and it's not that way. A lot of these guys are they're special quarterbacks, they're future Hall of Famers, but I don't know what played in that. And before I get to Justin's take on this, Justin, I think if his name was Mike McCartney, I think Roy would have no problem with it.
No question.
How about next podcast, Mike? You ask me first.
Oh, okay.
And then that way Roy can follow up, and I can steal his thunder. Once again, he said exactly everything I was going to say, so I'll just leave it at go back and listen to my Roy's answer again.
Perfect. Well, guys, I don't know. Maybe I'll go Justin first on this one.
By the way, Mike McCartney is a really good photographer, the brother of James Paul McCartney. His brother Mike, a really good photographer. Follow him on Instagram or Twitter. It's a good follow.
See, Roy always brings something to the table, man, beyond football. But we'll never agree on the Billy Joel Elton John. Okay, last question. I'm getting ready to do this right now in my house. I'm not going to reveal my answer, but Christmas is coming, guys, and I'll go Justin first because he requested it kind of there. Okay, you like real trees or fake trees?
Oh, real for sure. The only downside to a real tree is that it starts dying immediately, so it can't stay around. But there's something about the smell of a real tree during Christmas. I don't know. Maybe it's because when I was growing up, we always got a real tree. They're paying to clean up after. You got to water them. Get needles all over the house. But if I had the choice, I would choose a real tree.
Okay. You have a real tree this year?
Okay. I should have prefaced by saying I haven't had one since I've been an adult, but
right.
It's hard. I don't know. They're expensive. It's easy to have a fake one, but
right. I have no idea what Roy's going to say, and I don't even know. It's a 50-50 question, and I think I would lose if I bet. But Roy, go ahead.
Look, I'm a traditionalist, man. I love day baseball. I want to see teams take their time with quarterbacks. I like. I love it. I'm a real tree guy. I have gone both ways during different chapters in my life. Look, I love a real tree, and Justin made a lot of great points. I don't mind the needles. I don't mind having to water it. The smell is exceptional. And one of the great things you can do with a real tree is when you trim it, at the bottom to fit presents under and stuff like that. Here in my house right now, my wife has done a great job of, decorating the entire house with, snippets from the tree and stuff like that. So there's a lot of greenery around. It's beautiful. A real Christmas tree. It's what it's all about, man. I mean, it's the whole idea of the tree is it's evergreen. It's to symbolize the fact that we will never die, and so there you have it. It's got a lot of meaning to it. I believe in the real tree.
Guys, my mother, God bless her soul, left us 9.5 years ago. It's just crazy to think about it. She loved real trees, loved them. And I had no problem with them growing up, but I love my fake tree.
I knew it.
You knew the bell was coming, didn't you?
I did.
You didn't know that. Thought you would properly honor your mom by having a real tree. Here's the thing about the fake ones. They do a great job of making them look fake, but you know what? You still know they're fake.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of parallels to that in life, my friend, but we won't go down that road.
True.
Yeah. But now I'm ruining Christmas for everybody. But
no,
I like my tree because the lights are perfect every year. I'm getting ready my daughters and I are getting ready to do it right now. And I don't know. It's not a cost thing. I'm not a cheap son of a gun or anything, but I don't know, man. I like it, and it's worked well for years. I get why you like the real ones, though. I understand all that, but I don't know. It's just I've turned into a fake guy, I guess.
You'll never be fake.
All right. Well, listen. Happy holidays to everybody listening here on a Few Extra Bucs, pewterpirates.com podcast. We appreciate your support. We're gaining momentum each and every podcast. Let's wrap it up. For our esteemed producer, Justin Thomas, for our Buccaneer insider, Roy Cummings, the meat of this A Few Bucs podcast sandwich. I am merely Mike Nabors. Thanks to our style sponsors, House of Brews and Sea Dog Brewing Company. Great brews, great food, great service. Until next time, we'll see if Roy Cummings is right again in his predictions. Thanks for logging on.